Hello again, and it's a pleasure to be back on A Small World. And I hope that you'll find this follow-up a little bit interesting and slightly different. The first thing I'd say is if you missed the last one, it does not matter. Do not worry. We're covering it from the start. Now, we're actually going to do some live hacking today, and we're actually going to see some password extraction and stalking. So I must add, everything I will show you today is completely open source. It is legal. It's the act of taking it one step further that is illegal. The reason I'm showing you how to do this is so you can see how easy it is and what we can do in order to mitigate it. It's a lot easier to see from the hacker's perspective of how I would do this for you to then understand what the threat is and to actually work out what you can do to try and mitigate it somewhat. So if you have any questions and answers, I'll do them at the end. If you have any detailed questions, we can cover them. Please feel free to email me. I'm more than happy to give you one-on-one advice and work it out from there. So I'll give a quick introduction to myself, and then we're going to go into what a digital footprint is and how I can use this to do lots of nasty stuff. So all in all, we will be looking at public people. We will be looking at however, when we're doing a social media check and a password check, I'm pleased to say this is my account. So you will be seeing an account where I've been broken into and been released from there. Then we'll talk about what we can do to secure your Windows machine and to your Mac, and then we'll go into some password managers and what we can do from there. Oh, sorry, thank you kindly. You should be a lot easier to see now. Can you see me okay? Excellent. So let's go straight into it. From the introduction side, I am a very strange person. For those that don't know me, I was originally on nuclear submarines for 2 years. The longest I was underwater was 138 days on a nuclear missile submarine. So I used to sleep between number 3 and number 4 nuclear missile. And in that role, I was an intelligence officer and a communications and cybersecurity officer. I went from there to go into bomb disposal for 5 years. And after pottering around all of the Baltics and the Mediterranean, finding, in case you're interested, from a side note, there's still 1 million mines in the sea around the Mediterranean. So if you see anything spiky in the sea, don't hit it. It might go boom. And after that, I went to Somalia, and I was a pirate hunter for the Norwegian Navy. And I used to use the same things that I will be teaching you today to track and locate pirates on their social media so we can stop them from breaking into ships. I then went into the University of Cambridge, where I was the head of computer emergency response, dealing with lovely academics. And now I work at Tallinn, Taltech University, so the University of Technology in Tallinn. I also work for the Ministry of Defence and Cranfield University in the UK. And I also work for my own company as well, doing information security and incident response. So let's get straight into this. Every time you use the internet, every time you register with a website, every time you submit anything, you are starting to create a part of your digital footprint. And no matter how hard you try, you are not going to delete this. You can make it harder by doing the right to be forgotten if you're a European Union citizen, where you can remove the link from Google. But you're not going to be able to erase everything. You're not going to be able to disappear. And this is where we can start to pick an awful lot of stuff. And there are certain things that we can do to really find somebody. And this is mainly, we're going to go into the use of a tool called Sherlock. Sherlock being named after the fictional detective. But one of the things is, you know, humans need to socialize, but we also need to have consistency. So what you'll find is most people will use the same username across different social media sites and chat apps. If they don't use the same username, they normally use a username and then the number at the end is different. And this is where we go into a tool called Sherlock. There we go. Right. So don't get scared by the very, very complicated looking kernel hacking yellow text, green text that I'm using. But this Sherlock tool is actually not as complicated as it looks. All of this is standard. The only bit I'm trying to change is my username. So I've put in this example, Kieren L. Now what Sherlock will do is it will now scan every social media site and every website for anybody that is using Kieren L. It will then check and give me their account, and it will build in a very, very detailed picture of every website that that username is using, including sites that are not searchable. So this includes Telegram, Kik, Grindr, the Tinder, any of the dating apps. It will immediately craft you and show you exactly everything that that person has done. That builds an incredibly good picture because you know exactly what you can find about that person. As you can see, it's a rather easy and quick command. I've now got access to every website that I've ever used where I have used that same username. This is a very good way to find out exactly what somebody is like, what their interests are, and how you could try and find out something that you could get into there. Now you'll notice already we've got one here for like MySpace. This is something that happens quite a lot. Remember, you may be secure now. When you were back 16 years old, you probably registered lots of accounts and they no longer, you don't use them. That doesn't mean they don't exist. You've still probably got embarrassing messages in there, maybe some photos. Your date of birth definitely doesn't change. You'll probably have family details, lots of stuff that is still there. This even includes the MSN account for those that may have had a used MSN Messenger. Remember, MSN Messenger became Skype. So if they get access to your old accounts, they can still do a lot of damage with them. You can do this as many times as you want, and all of this data is public. So everything we've extracted, we've now got a big database list of everything that I have ever registered on the internet using the username Kieren L. This leads us on into the second part of where humans have a bit of a problem. We still crave consistency. So most of the time, if you're not using a password manager, your passwords will be the same. And if they're not the same, the number at the end changes by 1 digit. If we include this as a framework to kind of shoot from the hip, that actually includes 87% of all users. So most people use the same password and change the number at the end. So what can we do? Well, there's a fantastic and amazing hacker tool called the Breach Database, which we're going to pull up now, as you can see on the screen. I have on my laptop 1.9 billion usernames and passwords. These are all of the passwords that have ever been collected from every major breach. So this includes LinkedIn, Twitter, Skype, MySpace, various dating websites like Ashley Madison, alt.com, BDSM, Cupid, OkCupid, all of these sites. They've all been extracted and put in there. Now, I categorically tell you, most of you are in this list because the final breach that was particularly large was Adobe Acrobat Reader. So on the Adobe Acrobat Reader, again, most people that are using that, they're using it for work, and they're using the same username and password for their work account. So all I'm doing here now is I'm writing the command query Kieren L, so looking for the same username. And here we go. All of the passwords and usernames of anyone that has Kieren L in their email address. Those two there were mine. That was my username and password for my AT&T Global account. I'm pleased to say I've changed it now. So once we've got every place you ever log in with your username, once we match that with a password, there is a good chance one of those accounts is going to work. Because even if you change all of your passwords after this presentation, you're going to forget one. Which is where it comes in, where I say, email me afterwards, and I will happily give you everything I can find about you so you know where to look and what to change. I guarantee there'll be a lot of accounts that you've never heard of. There may also be a lot of accounts that people have registered using your username. So if you can't completely remember, there's a good chance that if you're Mr. John Smith, then of course, it's most likely somebody else. However, if you're using a unique one, then this will come up. So far, we've got people's username, everything where they have used this on, and the passwords for us to access. So this comes on to another tool that you can use, and I definitely think you should look and have a play, because this one is luckily not a command line prompt. This is a nice shiny web page, and this is called Shodan. Now, if you can use Google, you can use Shodan. Shodan is an internet search engine that looks for the Internet of Things. So by that, it looks for everything. Everything that's connected to the internet, toasters, refrigerators, webcams. If you can connect it, it'll be on there. However, even though it's on there, if you have a good password, if you've secured it, if you've done all of the stuff we'll talk about later, then you'll be fine. Then there's not much of a problem. Problem is, most people don't change things. Now, a question that you can answer yourself, when you got your Wi-Fi router and you plugged it in so you could get Wi-Fi to your iPhone and your iPad, did you change the password? Because if it is the same default password, there's a good chance you may pop up. So let's have a play around on Shodan. This is the website, and all I do is I have written the very complex term default password. It is then searched everything it can find where every box connected to it has the word default and password. So as we can see here, we have 53,975 different machines that instantly come up where the password is admin 1234. Which is pretty scary. And a lot of your routers will come like this, as you can see here. These are the Cisco routers. If you buy them and plug them in and don't configure them, by default, the password is Cisco, and you can then log in. Ironically, the user password is generally something complicated. That's something that they randomly generate. But the administration password is normally static. So I can log in to your router, log in as admin, and see everything that your web page, all of the websites you're calling out to, everything you're doing. So far, all I've managed to do is write default password. But we can also write extra tags, like I want to target it to a country. I can also take it a step further and do it towards a city. But I can even take it really far and go to a latitude and longitude. So it can tell me exactly where and what I'm looking for. But that's kind of cool, but at the moment that's just still a password that's default and the password, but can we go and look at a little bit more? Well, yes, we can. We can also ask it to look for certain events. Oh, and let me just move this. So what we can do is we can get it to look for remote access. Now, a lot of you may have used remote desktop, so you can log in from your work as at home, so log into your computer. Not all of these are done in a very secure way. And on this one, what I have asked it, I've said, could you look for any computer that is open on port 3389? You don't, all that is that's the technical term for remote desktop. And then I've written, does it have a screenshot? That's it. These are all administrator machines. They're desktop of how I can log in. Now, if they have usernames and it tells me what company they are, I can match that with my password database to find a username and log in to break into their network and steal all of their files. So you can see building that picture of the start of everything they use, then find the password breaches and then match it with their company, because I can search for company, I can search for person, I can search for IP addresses. But we can also take it a step further. So this tool here, what I have written is webcam, and does it have a screenshot? And these are screenshots of webcams of where people have not put on the password. I have to admit, this is a public allowed website. All of this material is open source and anyone can do it. So if you go to showdown.io now and start putting in your country, write has screenshot, type in webcam, you will see security cameras, you will see webcams, you will see people that have left their servers with default usernames and passwords. And a picture really does paint everything that I need to know in order to break in. As you can see on this one here, it's Windows Server 2012, but it's telling me at the bottom that it's out of date, so it hasn't been security patched. There is a webcam account which I can access. There's an administrator on the same machine, and one of the usernames of the person using the account. This is all public. This also includes, for those that are American, most of your speed cameras are also connected to this, and most of them have the password of password on there as well. So a very common scam is if you do get an email from the police saying that you have a speeding ticket, it may be that somebody has taken over the speeding ticket machine, changed the email address to a hacker's one, and change the bank details for who you pay. So actually, if you do get a speeding ticket and it's got a picture of you in there, and it's definitely you, still check with the police to see if they actually sent it to you. A lot of these are being exploited. There's more and more you can actually do on these exploits as well. And anybody can register for the free account. It shows you how much we can find on there. As you can see, the top ones that people are using are looking for webcams, default passwords. Webcams are, unfortunately, it's always bad to go and mention these areas, but one of the areas that appears a lot on this search is people buy tools, webcams for children. And unfortunately, it is a big target. If they've got one of those teddy bear ones where you can go and check on your son or daughter that she's sleeping okay, they will use these tools. And if you buy the ones, the cheap ones from China, there's very little security on them whatsoever. So it will pop up on this list, which also, because it has your IP address, you can then locate exactly where it's connected to and what street and house. So if you do have any of these tools to monitor children and everything, don't use them. They are inherently insecure, unless if you've bought one of a relatively high caliber. They should have security checks documentation on them. But if you've got a cheap one from AliExpress or one from Walmart, yeah, they're terrible, I'm afraid, and they will pop up very, very quickly. Now, it actually even goes further on this, because there are even ships connected to this, where I can track shipping and try and do GPS denial and lots of other stuff. License plate readers, wind turbines, where I can actually turn the clutch off and if I wanted to, and make fires happen. You can also see that there's you've got the Siemens S7, which we will cover in a little bit later. But S7 is it's how mobile phones work before internet. And a lot of these are, well, pretty much all of them can be exploitable and can be used to listen to your conversations. So if there's one thing I would say is, if you're having a sensitive conversation, do use WhatsApp, do use Skype, use anything other than a telephone to telephone, because they can be compromised very easily now. So as we cover on it, if I've got your username, I can find everything about you on the internet. If I've got your password or passwords, multiple breaches will come up. I know how to access it, and then I can use Showdown to find your devices. Once we've got that far, I effectively can be you. And it's very hard once you're at that point to do anything about it. Firewalls are great, encryption is fantastic, but all of these tools do not help if your first line of defense is compromised. If you have hard drive encryption turned on and you've got the greatest firewall, but I can still log in directly as a user with your password first time, your hard drive encryption doesn't do anything. It's, yeah, it's just as about secure as cheese. So what do we need to do about it? So that's definitely not saying you don't encrypt your hard drive. Please do. Because if you haven't turned on encryption and you leave your device somewhere, like you leave your laptop or you leave your Mac, then I take your hard drive out, I plug it into my computer, and I log in and I read all of your files. Now, you may think I am not a target. You are, I'm afraid. If you leave your laptop, do change all of your passwords, even if you have a very good Windows password. Because if I can take your hard drive out, and you haven't encrypted it, I can read it. No matter how boring you may think yourself, I guarantee you, you have pressed yes to save a password in your web browser, including your internet banking. Once I've got access to your hard drive, it's the first place I would go to look at it, to extract all of the websites that you visit, all of the passwords that you use. And if you have Google Wallet or the credit card ones in there, I've got your credit card number and we can start to make transactions. I don't need the CV number on the back if I'm putting customer not present. I can still play around and take some transactions out. So you are important. No matter how hard you think you're not, you are definitely important. So how do we do this on Windows? It's quite easy. If you have a Windows Professional box, click Start, type in the term BitLocker, and then turn it on. But it will give you a key, a backup key. For the love of God, save it, print it, and keep it somewhere safe. Because if you do forget your password, you are never accessing that data again. You need that key just in case if you forget it, and we all make mistakes. The last thing you want to do is make sure you lose all of your family photos or everything. So security is important, but access to your data is vital as well. So when you do it, make sure that you turn it on and save the key and you know the password. What that means is every time you turn on your computer, before it boots up Windows, it will ask for a password, type it in, and then it will carry on starting up. If I stole your laptop and I take your hard drive out, I can then plug it in and I can't go anywhere. All of the files will be just one file and it will be encrypted and I can't access it unless if I have your key or your password. So in that case, I will probably just sell your laptop if I was a criminal because it's now worthless. I can't access your data on it. There is a small caveat though when I say this. It is a free tool. It comes with Windows, but it doesn't come with Windows Home Edition. You need to upgrade to Professional in order for it to work, I'm afraid. And there isn't really a good solution for the Windows Home one. So the best thing to do is to upgrade to Windows Professional. If it's Mac, then that's very easy. Just go into Settings and there is a Security and Privacy tab. Click File Vault at the top and then click Encrypt and let it do its thing. It will make, it will take about 30 minutes, but once it's done, you won't notice any difference. It will just be, you log into your password as normal, and if you lose your laptop, again, it's exactly the same as the Windows one. I can't access it. Nothing else will be fine. So you'll all be nice and shiny and good. But let's now talk with the thing that's probably the one that scares the most of us is phone security. Do not buy mobile phone antivirus. 99% of them are made up. They don't do anything anyway. You're throwing money for very little in return. However, do update the phone, do patch it, and once it's run out of warranty, buy a new one. The minute they run out of warranty, they generally stop sending security updates. Now, if you are in certain areas when you travel, voice, normal telephone, this goes back to the S7 layer, normal telephone calls can be intercepted, and it's very regular that they do. This is very much the case if you go to a country or an area that has not as advanced intelligence tools. This is because what they do have is manpower, and they have the ability to spot the telephone calls for going out of country. They'll just listen to them. So from that side, if you are going to do secure calls, definitely use WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram, any of those functions over normal phone call. What I would also say is even Facebook Messenger is much better than using just a phone call. SMSs as well, terribly unsecure. So try not to use them. When you're installing apps, do make sure that you check the permissions on it. There was a very interesting case that happened about 6-7 months ago of a web tool that you could install to read your Gmail account on your phone in a new and funky way. Be very paranoid with some of the things that they say. It may seem obvious when it says, do you allow the app to read your email? What it actually meant was it's reading your email. It was analyzing everything that you're doing, and then it was sending it across to this app, which was analyzing everything into text, which is something you do not want it to do. So do be very careful with all of these permissions. Be skeptical. This is getting more and more apparent with different technologies, and one you may have seen in the press at the moment is TikTok, which has lots of unique and interesting functions, like it will read your messages and read your texts and read your email and start to collect lots of data. At the moment, we don't know why it's doing all this. The company ByteDance has been very patient and trying to push this all the way down the line. But if there's one thing we have learned from our glorious friends at Facebook, when we do find out, it probably won't be pretty. Election hacking has been quite rife. Facebook's analytics has been used to assist very dodgy regimes in order to push their agenda. So yeah, if it seems to be too good to be true, that's because it is. So be careful on installing these apps. This is particularly true if you are using some of the dating apps, because while TikTok is being mentioned in the press, the one you may not know, which is exactly the same, is the gay dating website Grindr. Grindr is actually, it's produced in Beijing, and they do full analytics on everything that they're getting, all of the metadata, locations, all of the messages that you send. It's actually a Chinese state-funded company. Now there is and there's an American investment arm that owns it, but it's still based in Beijing, and all of the programming, all of the development, and all of the logs are stored there. So it's not just the things you hear about in the press and in the media either. Major reason that Grindr has not come up so much is not a lot of people want to be going into that area of discussing it. So what can we do? So definitely turning on encryption is good. You can also do it on your phone. So if you press the hamburger and type in encryption, you can most likely turn it on. But as we've stressed, if I've got your username, then I'm going to find your username pretty much everywhere else. And if I've got your password, I'm going to find a way in. So password managers are your friend. Now I've written 2 here. If you're paranoid, LastPass is a great tool. It will work with your phone, and it will work with Chrome, and it will work with Edge and lots of other tools. Basically, a password manager is an encrypted file which is only opened by one master password, which will store all of your other passwords in there. It will replace your saved passwords in your web browser, and it will also do some security checks to make sure they can't be hacked easily. However, if you're ultra paranoid and use tinfoil for a hat, may I suggest KeePass2 is a tool that you may use. KeePass2 is, there's a Windows, a Mac, and a phone client. But the difference is it works exactly the same as LastPass. It's free, but you store the password file locally. So it's on your computer or on your phone, or you can put it in Google Cloud or Dropbox or wherever you want and have one copy there. But you own that file, you can physically see it, and you're the only one that can access that encrypted file. I prefer that one personally, but it all depends on the best way that you can use the tool and how you work with it. However, what definitely do not do, and we all do it, well, used to do it, don't write your passwords down in your machine as a Word document or text documents or anything like that, or an Excel, or have a little routine or a little book. It's very common for people to have a look in those. If I can access your hard drive, I will find them. And when people are robbing houses now, if they're going to rob the machine, they do look for the little book as well if they've got time. It's much easier if they can rob all of your stuff, access your computer to wipe it, but before they do, they'll have a look at some of your internet history and your internet banking. But there are going to be some accounts that you need to just have a password that you need to type in all the time. I get it. Single sign-on if you're using Office 365, you're logging in and out of it all the time. So I want you to forget everything you have been taught about passwords, because we've taught it wrong for years. Forget about uppercase letters, lowercase letters, punctuation, none of that matters. Length. So the longer it is, the harder it is to crack. So make it long, make it easier for you to remember. And the easiest way you can do that, as the advice from the UK government at the moment, is think passphrase rather than password. So if you don't, please, for the love of God, don't use this one as an example, but if you use the best of times or the worst, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times as one password, that's actually 17 quadrillion years for me to crack. If you use uppercase letter Q, Z, P, H, bracket, question mark, and an A, that's 1 week. It really makes that much difference by going much further than 12 characters. The reason we say passphrase over password is if it's a passphrase, you can actually remember the longer password. So passphrase it. Also, it helps as a passphrase if you're using a sentence or something, is even though we know complexity doesn't help and these special characters don't help, a lot of the websites you use will demand you have an exclamation mark or a lowercase letter or an uppercase letter. If you're typing it as a sentence, it's already got uppercase letters, lowercase letters, punctuation, and that's fine. Space bars are normally accepted in passwords as well. So do have a go. But no matter what happens, you may be targeted and you may be approached. Now you'll look at this picture here. I have sent myself an email from jesus.christ@god.com. One of the worst bits of advice we have given people over the years is that the email address may look slightly like the email you think, rather than it might be exactly it. And yes, it can be spot on. There's nothing stopping me emailing you as Jesus Christ or donald.trump@whitehouse.gov, and you would not know it's anybody else. So that's first bit of advice when opening your email. If you're targeted and they're heavily looking at you, yes, it can be an email from your boss. Yes, it can be an email from your wife. So don't trust it just because it looks spot on. The days of where you hover the mouse button over it and it will be a different email address, where you click reply and it comes up something strange. Unfortunately, hackers have moved on from there. So that still exists a lot, but if you're targeted, they will just copy your boss's email. And as you can see, I've emailed here from Jesus Christ himself. I've also emailed from Bill Gates, Donald Trump, Queen Elizabeth II, and Boris Johnson. So there is nothing stopping it. But as you know, at the end of this, I'll give you a webpage where not only you can ask any questions, but I'll tell you everything that you want about yourself, and I'll give you a full personalized report of where to look, everything I can find, all of the passwords I can find, and any devices that I can see that are attached to you. But what I can also do is have a bit of fun. And what I can also do is I'll tell you the time, I'll tell you the date, and I will spearfish you. And what I mean by that is I will send you an email pretending to be someone else to see if you click the link or click display images. So if you want to be tested and want to see if you can spot a number of things and how hard it can be, please ask, and I will more than happily send you a test. The link is safe and the image is safe. It will be a dancing teddy bear, so nothing nasty. But leading on to the final bit, you may have noticed I said click the link or click display images. If you are checking your email, and you'll notice sometimes it says at the top, these images have been stopped. If you click download, it will activate code, or can activate code in order to run a toolkit on your machine, so to install malware. But even if it doesn't, even if it is just a boring image that it's downloading, I will get to your IP address, your computer's operating system, your web browser version. I will know everything about your computer. So in terms of tracking people or tracing people, yes, images are a fantastic way of doing it without you giving consent. If I do cookies, I have to do cookie policies, and there's some law and stuff. If you've wondered how marketing companies have really got you, a good chance of it's coming from images. It will be spot on, and it will tell you exactly everything about your computer. And you may have heard a number of these companies that have done these approaches, where they phone you up and pretend to be Microsoft, and they know everything about your operating system. They know that you aren't using Windows 10. They know you got Edge. That's how they're getting it. Once they've got the IP address, they can then trace it, find it, and see if they can find you. And most IP addresses you can really drill down. So, am I expecting you to go straight into hardcore hacking? No. But in looking at those tools, and for those that want proper manuals and instruction of how to use them, I will send them all across to you, and this is fine. But the bit that you need to understand is the ability for me to do this, and therefore anybody, is there. All of this data is public. All of this data is open. All of these tools have fantastic guides on YouTube. You can track, you can trace, and you can get access to all of these passwords. Nothing we have looked at today is illegal. They're all public, open source data. All of those breaches have been notified. They supposedly, Adobe has promised that they have sent a notification to everybody. But you will probably find that you either didn't get it, or it's an email address you've never used. So I will now just put on the chat, there is a website you can do without doing all of my coding stuff to find out exactly if you have a breach. And if you Google, have I been punned? I'll just quickly. And put your email address in, it will tell you what websites that my password database has without telling you what it is. It will just say, so you can search for loved ones, you can search for friends, family, and your co-workers, and we can do it. If you are working as part of a company and you want me to send you a list of everybody's username and password, which is exposed to your company's domain name, please put that in the ASW security check. I will happily give you a list of all of the usernames and passwords against your company that are publicly exposed. So in kind of summing up now why I've showed you all this stuff, teaching hacking is a doddle. It is really easy. You copy and paste from the internet, you replace username with the person's username, or the password database, you just change that to whoever you want. The difference is motivation. This is what you need to be worried about. State hackers are nowhere near as bad as a very annoyed ex-partner, or a stalker, or pedophiles, or somebody that is really motivated to get into your account and cause you problems, or cause anyone problems. I can teach hacking, I can't teach motivation. So what you need to do is make your password and stronger. So unfortunately, they move on to the next guy. They look at somebody else because you're too hard to get into. If you have social media accounts, do have different usernames for different accounts. Make it harder for them to put the jigsaw together of everything about you. Make it harder so only the most determined person can get into your account. Additionally, when it goes wrong, and it will, if it goes wrong, don't panic. If you ever need any assistance, you can always ping me a message on ASW or send me an email, and I'll always happily help. From another side, though, there are multiple ways that you should look in your country. If you're in the UK, how to report anything to the National Crime Agency, or if you're in the United States, how to report it to the United States CERT. But when it happens, you may panic. So when you do panic, pause, don't worry, and send it across to me. If it comes in via email, and most of the time it is, please feel free to email me, and I will ask for the evidence of what the malware is. I'll tell you exactly what it does, but more importantly, I'll help you find the Git that sent it and shut him down. So we can do analytics in the header data to find, locate, and then do takedown requests. So we can take it further, and more than happily help you out there as a fellow ASWer. But the most important thing is just don't panic. It will happen. It's happening more and more now than ever before. The latest report we've just done is that email attacks, getting compromised data, and to using your own personal details that are exploited, has gone up 667% since the start of COVID-19. This is because there are lots and lots of bored people at home with motivation to do this. A lot of people have lost their jobs, and any way that they can try and exploit and get money out of it is very high. So unfortunately, that's the case. While also combined with the fact that lots of people are working remotely, they don't have a lot of the intruder detection systems or firewalls or everything that's there in order to go anything. So as you can see, it's a very complex area if you don't look at it holistically. So that is the purpose of the security check that you have for free. I'll be able to look as an outsider and tell you everything about yourself. So coming up onto time there. I will just, lovely computer. I will now open it up to any questions. Oh, we've got How about 1Password? Okay, 1Password is a good tool. No problems with 1Password. What I would say is either looking at 1Password or LastPass. I preferred LastPass just because it's quite an easy tool to use, but use one that works for you. But 1Password, yeah, it's not a bad tool at all. I get slightly annoyed with it sometimes because whenever I'm using it on the phone, I have to go all the way up to the top of the page to press the hamburger thing. But that's a personal preference. So, however, I will now ask the autonomous attendee. Yes, aren't the password managers hackable? I don't trust them. For most people, they are good enough, the LastPass or 1Password. But for those that don't trust anybody, and I'm completely with you on this one, this is where KeePass 2 comes in. So yes, it's a password manager, but the password manager is on your device. The file is not stored anywhere remotely. It's an open source product, so the encryption on there is anybody can look at, and the code is very, very well done. It's very well maintained. So even if you don't trust them, like I don't, then there is an alternative. But I will be absolutely honest, I am probably being too paranoid. So if you're really paranoid like me, KeePass 2, because you've got access to the file. But if you are you want to make it better, then yeah, 1Pass or LastPass, definitely much better. So how do I secure my iPhone? Definitely go onto on your device, turn on Track My iPhone, and also back up to iCloud. However, there is a caveat. On the iPhone, when you back up to the cloud, remember it's taking all of your images, all of your texts, and all of the emails and everything on your device and backing it up in the cloud, which is actually how a lot of law enforcement people have accessed and cracked iPhones. They're not actually cracking the iPhone. They're finding your username and password for your iCloud account, logging in, and then reading all of your messages. So on that point, that's where your password for your iCloud account is so vitally important. Make it long, make it as long as you possibly can. It is a very good feature, but can also be used against anyone. Any password managers I do not recommend? Yes. Unfortunately, the company of AOL still exists. And AOL are doing their AOL branded Secure Safe, which what they do is they take somebody else's product and they badge a price onto it. It's already free. So it's got nothing to do with if it's hackable or not. It's just kind of a bit despicable from AOL's point, where most of the people that are using the AOL client are probably more older and haven't changed and updated. But yeah, they're actually selling something that's already free. It's LastPass, and it's the free LastPass account. So I don't recommend them because I think that's just a bit off, to be fair. It's selling them, yeah, it's snake oil salesman. What app would you recommend on an iPhone to clean it from cookies, clear space, and so on? Actually, the best way of doing that is by installing, if you put in Firefox, they actually have an iPhone client. And what you can do is you can do it so it will delete the cookies and clear all of your history every time you close the browser. So you don't have to think about it ever again. So that's the one I use, just because then the minute I know I close the window is good. So a very easy way of doing it. Why is LastPass free? Good question. LastPass is free because they're trying to get you to use the Enterprise edition. So for most people's purposes, it's good, good enough. But yeah, they will try upping it a lot to try and get you to buy the next Enterprise edition. So, but yeah, they're just unfortunately sales. What I do with LastPass though is I do use a burner email account, so I don't get lots of stuff. So, is Firefox safer than Safari? To be absolutely honest, no. From the browser point of view, in terms of cookies, in history, it's a lot easier to do it. But I'm afraid the browser wars are back again, and whatever web browser you use, you're pretty much using Chrome. Firefox is still different, but most people end up having to install Firefox and Chrome or Safari because the web page just doesn't work on it. So what I would suggest is use the one that you are most comfortable with, but make sure it's always up to date. Now, VPN is an interesting one. I covered that last time, but we have to be a bit careful because it all depends in what country you are in. Because VPN is always a very good idea. So a virtual private network. It sends a secure tunnel from your phone or from your laptop to another place where anything in the traffic in between can't be intercepted. Now, the problem is if you're in certain places like UAE or Saudi Arabia or China, these are illegal and they are spotted. So yes, if you're operating in a country that it's fine in, definitely really good idea. What I would say though is whatever VPN you use, pay for it. This goes back to the previous comment of what somebody said, why is it free? If it is a free VPN, it is because they have to make money somehow and they're doing it through the analytics of your web searching history, which is way worse than just not using a VPN. So if you're paying for it, yeah, that's where they're getting their money from. NordVPN fell into this problem. They got caught selling an awful lot of data. They have changed their policies now and changed their processes. The only analytics they do is security. But yeah, for VPNs, you get what you pay for. Can someone access the data on my iPhone memory like they access unencrypted? It depends. If you are using a older iPhone, then yes. If it's not using the latest iOS operating system, then yeah, it can be mounted. There's a number of tools that people can access that are open source. And if you Google hacking iPhone iOS 7, you'll see loads of people doing it. And you'll also find that a number of people have installed this device in airports. So, you know, those charging stations where you can plug your USB stick in? Yeah, what they do is they put the device in the other end, you plug it in, and it extracts all of your data. However, if you're running the latest iPhone, then no. At the moment, it's very secure. Make sure you turn on all of the updated patches, though, and you get them nice and shiny and new. Can someone access the data on iPhone? No, sorry, that one. Yes, I like you, Nixon. Would you recommend switching off a computer at the end of the day or leave it in sleeping mode? I will happily tell you a story about me at the University of Cambridge where I was saved because one of my users left early from work, turned their machine off and went for a gin and tonic on a Friday at 4 o'clock. They got infected by a malware package, and before it caused havoc on our network, they turned the machine off. It meant I spotted it and could find it before it did any damage. Switching a machine off is fantastic. It's hard to hack anything that's off. Even if you turn it off half the day, well, that means half the day I can't access it. The other side is if you're turning it off and then turn it back on again, Windows updates will do its thing automatically. So we don't do what we all love doing, which is press ignore and waiting another 5 or 6 days before we restart our computer. So not only is it good for the environment, it's good because I can't hack your device and it won't pop up on Showdown if it's turned off. And it's good to keep it updated and patched. So excellent advice. What's your opinion on Bitdefender box, or is there another software or hardware firewall that you recommend? It depends. I'm personally more into the Cisco boxes, but that's just because what I'm comfortable with. So in that side, no. But what I would say is, in terms of the actual firewalls, a lot of them are just exactly software-based firewalls anyway, with just a nice expensive logo put on. If you look at the Cisco ones, for example, most of those are IP tables. It's a free package that you can get from Linux anyway. So, yeah, a lot of them are just rebadged shiny boxes. So the difference between a hardware-based firewall and a software one generally is the box, in most cases. However, with Bitdefender, they do have a good intelligence package where they can update your rules and get the latest threats put in there. So I do like Bitdefender, but the only reason I don't use it is I'm more comfortable with the Cisco products. But that's the only reason. But yeah, hardware-based is good because you can know physically it's not hitting your device or Windows doing it. But it is just a computer with some firewall software on it. So more importantly than anything, that you do have a firewall. And if you're using Windows or Mac, it should be turned on by default now. But if not, if you click the start menu and type in firewall, then it will be good. What VPN do I recommend for France? There's a really good one actually that comes from France called TunnelBear. And I really like TunnelBear because of two things. One, they do have a free one, but it's only 500 megabytes. So they're not doing any processing or analyzing of your data. They're just doing it so they can connect, so that you go for a paid account. But the real reason why I like it is the most easiest app I have ever used for a VPN. You just press the country you want to log into, and then you see a little teddy bear get a shovel out and he digs his way all the way to the country. It is so easy, and it's just a great little tool, and a great company from France. But yeah, TunnelBear is the name of that one. Oh, and I believe, yes, the talk is being recorded and the link will be sent out later. How, of course, if you have any of you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat. I'll leave that. KierenNicolas.com/ASW security check. Please send me anything you want. I will tell you everything I can find about you, any passwords there. But if you have any questions, just ask. And if you ever have a problem in the future, this is what all friends are about and what the small world is about. Just ask and I'll get back to you straight away. So we can all help each other. It is a really challenging time at the moment. Everybody's working remotely. Everybody's stressed. Hackers are bored. And we're working entirely by email. We're jumping with both feet into the information age now. So It's quite crazy. And then combine this with what's happening with China and their apps and people traveling through Hong Kong. And yeah, it's a bit chaotic at the moment. So please feel free to ask and I will answer all of your questions. And if you have any emails or any incident that you want an assistance with, just give me a message and I'll do some analytics on it when I can and tell you what's happening. Elise, hello. Using the next generation firewalls to deep packet inspect every in and out. Okay. Yeah. So for those that don't know, you can do something called deep packet inspection. What this is where you have a device that goes into your network and it will decrypt all of your nice shiny traffic that you've got on HTTPS. And then it will start doing some look into the packets. It's not complete decryption, but like it. And then recrypts it again and then has a look at it. Yeah, they can be more problematic than they can help. If they're set up correctly, yes, they are quite helpful, but you'll generally find that they make so many things not work too well that you end up having a bit of a holes punch through the rules in order to make things work. So stress test it. If your company is using them, make sure it really is doing its thing. Additionally, you are producing a man-in-the-middle attack. And we've actually seen historically that there are problems with this from a countrywide level. The deep packet inspection is being done for the entire country of Kazakhstan. So if you go to any web page there and it's HTTPS for your banking, it's actually completely decrypted and then re-encrypted with a new certificate. Yeah, I can see why they want to do it, to read all the messages, but that does mean somebody in the government has the ability to read everything that you do. Do you trust everybody in there? Additionally, for those in the European Union, you have to be very careful when using those tools in terms of your privacy policy and employees. You have to make sure that you have really notified everything about them. So, because you're starting to get into quite intrusive data log collection. So, yes, when set up correctly and working well, they are a good way to stop malware, but they can be bypassed. A lot of the new malware is already working out how to get around this, and you'll find that lots of the new malware are actually using SSL encryption and then obfuscating the code by doing Caesar stuff, and they're doing an awful lot to bypass as much as they can. But there are a lot of problems with actually how you manage it, and especially in the European Union, it can be a nightmare for your policy team, because if something does happen and somebody does breach that area, or you've got a concern in that area, you've lost a lot more than a load of weblogs that say something encrypted and nothing happened. Apple stores in our account all of the mobile apps that were bought free. Yes. To anonymous attendee. I like that. Are you in the European Union, or are you, whereabouts are you based? EU. Then you can, yes. Feel free. In the European Union, I have done successfully a right to be forgotten request to an Apple account. So if you Google right to be forgotten, fill in the paperwork and send it to Apple, they have to comply. So yes, you can be erased. They normally push back, but yes, they can erase all of your history. Is it really deleted? That's another question. But you can't see it, and they tell you that they've done it. I receive emails from Google, Apple, PayPal that look real, but when I click on the email address of the sender, those are not real. It could be that you are infected. Yes, the malware can come through. If you depressed display images on your email, then yes. If you click the link, yes. And if you click the email address, if it's within the body of the text, then that can be the link as well. I'm not saying you are infected though. If you're using a Macintosh, it's normally harder to get infected because it's not worth making malware for it. If you are worried, what I would suggest is if you go to, I'll type it in here. If you Google a web, you're using mail from iPhone, you'll be fine. Yes, mobile phone malware exists. Yes, it's very, very hard to get it. As long as you're using a new shiny phone and you're updating it and you haven't jailbroken it, it's very hard to activate malware on a phone. So chances are you'll be fine. If you've done it on a PC, however, the best way of doing it, I would suggest, the one that we've had the most success with is something called Sealant, which is a tool. You can get a cheap account, but that's quite a good one. But a very good follow-up question. Why do I receive them regularly? You're on a list and you'll be forever on that list, I'm afraid. The only way you're going to get off it is by changing your email address. But what will have happened is some time ago, they know your email address has been stuck up on there. If you put that email address and mark it as the one you're getting them from, I can most likely tell you where the breach came from and who's the person responsible for releasing your email address to the wild. Because most likely, rather than it being from you, it's been from a company that's lost your data. So if you write that in the request on the Small World one, I'll have a look for you and I'll tell you where it's from. I received an email once and they asked for ransom and mentioned my real password. I have a TED talk on this one. Yes, that password is from the same password database and they are using it to look like you've been hacked. It's a social manipulation. It's proper social engineering. They haven't hacked your device. They're using the 1.9 billion usernames and passwords, emailing you with your own password on it, and then making it look like you have. They normally ask for a ransom to say that you were on a pornographic website and they activated your webcam. If you Google my name, there's a whole TED talk about it where I analyzed it. Interestingly enough, that malware took about 20 minutes to write from the hacker. They've earned over $800,000 US in the last 2 months. Whereas if you look at WannaCry and all of the big malware that we've actually seen, they made about $32,000. It wasn't worth it for all of the development work that they actually put in. However, the ransom note and the real email works very successfully. And it was my biggest problem I had with the University of Cambridge because scared students didn't want to be targeted. But yeah, ransom notes is very common. And if you ever see that, you'll probably notice the passwords I send you are the ones that they're using. Yeah, they're not compromising your machine, though. You'll be pleased to hear, and your webcam hasn't been hacked. Right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I'm looking forward to getting the requests from you. And as I said, any questions you want, the more detail you put into that form, the more I can tell you about yourself and give you enough so you can look to work out how to secure your position more. But I hope you enjoyed it, and looking forward to hearing from you soon. So thank you very much.